I was jolted awake this morning by the sound of some pretty hard rain on my roof. It is around 6 a.m., which is quite a bit earlier than I usually show up to the barn, but I had to come early to get Nigel in out of the rain. It wasn't supposed to rain until this afternoon, but as you can hear, it is really coming down.
Skelly!
All of the other horses are snug in their stalls and run in sheds. I pop on my raincoat and then head out to catch Nigel.
I'm coming, Nigel. Come on. Nigel.
I think I got here just in time because Nigel is still pretty dry. I could tell right away that he was not interested in coming in even though it was pouring out. The little bit of rain that has just fallen hasn't even soaked into the ground yet, so it is really slick out here.
Oh, Nigel.
In his haste to escape capture, Nigel did take a little bit of a tumble. Instead of continuing to let him run around, I decided to just go ahead and corral him into Frisco's stall. This should be way easier to get him caught up.
Come on, Nigel.
Thankfully, it looks like he isn't hurt from his little slip in the mud.
Better get in there.
I have been catching Nigel in Frisco's stall quite a bit, so Frisco knows the drill already. Once I have Nigel trapped, it's pretty easy for him to accept the halter. Even though he's only been getting rained on for 10 minutes, he is starting to shiver. We are going to have to take a short little walk outside, but then I can go ahead and get him dried off and into a nice fleece cooler. Just in the last couple of minutes, it did start raining much harder.
Come on, Nigel.
I think Nigel's tiny little feet do slip in the mud easier than the bigger horses. Once I got him inside, I did get him dried off and a fresh cooler on. These ones that you guys got me off my wish list are perfect for rainy days like these. This should draw the moisture off of Nigel and he'll be toasty warm in no time. It looks like the horses are going to have to stay inside this morning and won't get turned out on the grass. The weather forecast was a little bit off today and we are supposed to get rain for a few hours this morning. I'm going to go ahead and open a brand new big bale of hay. This is all stuff that is a little bit too nasty for the horses. With all of the bad stuff peeled off, I'm going to load up my cart so I can divvy up the breakfast meals. The rain that we're getting is preventing my tarp from covering all the hay, so that's why I had to open a brand new bale. With the moisture getting onto this one, if I don't feed it pretty soon, it will go bad. As soon as I was done getting the hay, the sky opened up and it looked like it was going to be nice enough for me to turn the horses out. all of the boys turned out onto their little pastures, I did still have to go get Skeletor. Frisco pretty much gets to do whatever he wants, so I just open his gate every day and he kind of wanders around and grazes. Skeletor was having a little bit of the scares this morning. He didn't want to cross over the threshold from the arena to the turnout. This weather was also making him a little bit crazy. This kind of behavior makes me really nervous for Skeletor.
Skeletor. Hey.
He definitely doesn't need to be doing this kind of acrobatics with his hurt leg.
Go away.
I think some days he just can't help it because he has so much extra energy. He's been doing a lot more horsing around lately, so I'm really surprised he's been staying sound. I'll have to look back in my notes, but I think it's been about 9 months since his initial injury to that leg. I need to speak with my vet, but it might be time that he's starting to get a little bit more exercise. He doesn't need hard work, but some extra time outside on long walks would probably do him a world of good. I'm still trying to figure out how to juggle the rest of the horses around so Skeletor has a companion for the summer. You can see just after a little bit of running around, his leg is bothering him. Even though he's not lame on it, I think he knows that if he messes around too much longer that it'll hurt for a couple of days.
Go.
I have noticed just in the last couple of weeks that he has really been packing on a lot more muscle. With him turning 5 this year, I think he's really starting to look like a grown-up horse. Currently, Skeletor is getting turned out in the morning and evening on the grass. He also gets 2 pounds of ration balancer, so twice as much as all the other horses. He is also getting a fancy stabilized rice bran pellet. Right now he's only getting 1 pound of that every day, but I think I could bump him up and he would look even better. I know a bunch of people out here that take their horses on trail hikes. So instead of going on a typical trail ride, you just hike along with your horse on the ground. If Skeletor continues to stay sound even with all of his shenanigans, I think that might be a good activity for us to start doing. Skeletor really doesn't mind being by himself, so I think I could take him out on the trail without him misbehaving. I would like him to have a buddy for turnout though, to maybe calm his mind, and I think I figured out the perfect horse. The last couple of days, Frisco Bill has really been buddying up with Skeletor. He has been tackling this pretty high grass patch while he's turned out, and they have been becoming reacquainted. Skeletor has a ton of grass in his own little pasture, but I keep catching him coming over to Frisco Bill to hang out. When I very first got Skeletor, Frisco was the one that showed him the ropes and taught him about being turned out with other horses. At that time, Skeletor was much smaller and skinnier than Frisco, but I have noticed Skeletor start to figure out how to maybe crib. It has been a very, very long time since I had a horse that cribs, and I do not want Skeletor figuring that out. Skeletor does have a ton of toys that he has access to, but there's usually no replacement for the company of another horse. Since he is looking sound today, I think today might be the perfect day to put these boys together.
Whoa, Frisco Bill. Oh.
Frisco immediately figured out what was going on, and he decided he'd rather be with his mare. I was able to catch him up pretty quickly, and then I plopped him out with Skeletor. He immediately got upset about not being able to see Prim. All of his trotting around and carrying on actually scared Skeletor, so he just went out into his pasture and started grazing. Studman was worried about why Frisco was so upset, and after a few minutes of him just trotting around being nutso, I decided to let him back out. Frisco's attachment to Prim is going to present a lot of problems for her training in the future. If Frisco acts this way every time I take her off the property, then she will never get trained.
Come on, Studman.
There are some pretty big differences between Prim and Scarlet. I am really hoping when I switch Scarlet over to be with Frisco Bill, he forgets about Prim. She is a very needy mare, and Scarlet is pretty independent, so I think it might make the transition a little easier. Since Studman can't go out on the grass, I just turn him out in the arena, and if he sticks his head through and gets a little nibble here and there, that's totally fine. He just cannot have access to free choice grass in the morning like the rest of the horses. I don't think he minds too much. He likes to get out and roll around in the sand and go for little jogs. I have noticed he's been getting a lot more energized because his feet feel much better with his shoes on. If it ever stops raining and snowing, he is going to be the first one on my list to get started under saddle. I'm not quite sure how much time I have to let the horses out this morning, but I'm going to hurry up and get my chores done. With all of the horses out on pasture, it shouldn't take me very long to get all of the stalls cleaned up for the day. Frisco seems like he's not too upset about how I traumatized him this morning. Nigel's cooler was doing its job, so I switched it out for a fresh one.
Frisco Bill. Oh boy. Frisco Bill.
Frisco couldn't see Prim because she was in her stall eating her breakfast, so he had to come into the barn to check on her. His stall looks like it's pretty clean. Frisco is usually pretty tidy in his stall, especially if the weather's nicer and he can get outside and just poop in his run. I only had a few little piles to pick up, and then I could go ahead and add some nice fresh shavings for him. These shavings kind of stay in a big giant block, so I've got to break them apart so they're nice and fluffy. After quite a bit of fluffing up of these shavings, it looks like his stall is finally ready. I have started Frisco on a different senior feed that is much lower in sugar, and he seems to really be liking it.
Frisco Bill, come on.
He started dumping his buckets of mash, and I think he's just tired of getting boring food all the time. This senior feed is a little bit lower in sugar, but it still might be too much for him. I'll probably test it out for a month or so and see how he responds to it. The next stall I'm going to clean is Skeletor's, and it looks like he had just a turd tornado in here. I don't understand how one horse can make so many piles overnight and then just mash them around everywhere. His stall is by far the worst every single day, and it takes me the longest to get situated. I really wish I had a smaller pasture for him that he could be out on all of the time. This is Studman's stall before I clean it. He is so neat and tidy.
Nigel. Hey, buddy. Nigel.
Nigel is also very tidy inside of his stall. For Studman, I just have to fluff up his shavings and remove a tiny wet spot he usually has. After that, I just add some new shavings and his stall is ready for him. It seems like I finished the stalls just in the nick of time because it is starting to rain again. I don't usually come to the barn so early in the morning, so I think the boys were a little bit suspicious as to what exactly I was doing. It seemed like they were ready to come in and have their ration balancer, but they were a little bit disappointed to see that I had no snacks for them and just poop. I think being out on the grass has really made Gus feel a lot better. He always tends to spark up a bit when they get out on pasture every spring. He is still looking a little bit on the scraggly side, but I think he'll have his winter hair all slicked off by the next week, I'm guessing. The boys only got to be out on the grass for about an hour and a half this morning before I had to start bringing everybody in. With all of the horses gathered up and in their stalls, I set about trying to find Tiny.
Tiny?
It's a little bit unlike her to not come out when I turn the shaky plate on, but it is still rather early in the morning for her to be up yet. I typically get done with all my morning chores around 11 and it is now 8:30 in the morning. So I am definitely ahead of schedule for the day. I've got my fingers crossed for some blue skies and sunshine this afternoon. I'm gonna head home and do some laundry while this rainstorm passes. Thank you guys so much for watching and stay tuned for the next video.